So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. When Jesus came back out of the wilderness, came down from the mountain, he was identified. He was one with his identity. He knew who he was. It says something about that as he went through, the people were awakened. It says the people that sat in darkness saw great light. Saw great light, which is a wonderful thing because it shows you that when you know who you are, others who are spiritually inclined know who you are too. It's the start, really, of his mission, you see, that his identity begins to be recognized, recognizable and recognized. So the people that had been in darkness, and before the Christ came, they were in darkness. I think they had 400 years between the close of the Old Testament and Daniel's prophecy before the time of Jesus coming in, and it was a dark time. And they saw now a great light, This is what happens, that I think any time we identify ourselves with science, with the seven, with the four, with the four levels, with the whole system, any time we identify ourselves rightly, this is recognizable. It's seen. It isn't seen by the physical senses. It isn't seen by the human sense or the personal sense. It's seen by the spiritual sense. In wherever that spiritual sense is, we can be sure that we are known. We're known for who we are and what we are. And that was the experience of Jesus. So we come to the final subtone of love again at the point of life. And because we talked about, being recognized, that we are known for who we are, and now we see that we begin to identify others. Others become recognizable to us. And it's where Jesus calls his disciples. He calls them and makes them fishers of men. So we see how love is really working to make each one become conscious of his universal identity. They couldn't have responded, and they couldn't have recognized who he was. They couldn't have followed him. They couldn't have responded to his call if they didn't have some sense of who they were, you see, of their identity. So it's a more universal sense of identity that's coming out, and whenever we know who we are, we somehow help others to know who they are, don't we? Very much in your experience, that's such a natural thing. That when you are who you are, you know who you are, that you see, because there's no ego there. There's only the divine ego. There isn't a human I, an egotistical sense. There's none of that, the possibility of that ego stuff. That was all resolved through the first three temptations, especially in the first two, where we would say, well, what's going to happen to me? What will happen to me now? And well, what about my career and my this and my that? All those doubts were resolved into the identity of subject and object being one. And when we have that consciousness, then we can help others to see who they are and find their true identity. So it begins to become universal, and we will see how that whole mission takes off, how it takes off. It will take off first in the way that Jesus begins to show them, begins to show the people what his principle is, what therefore through his teaching, you see, he's able to show them what he is founded on, what he is identified with, that identity is not some personal identity, but that it is an identity with a divine principle, a principle that is systematic, scientific, and can be taught. And if it can be taught, it can be learned. We'll see how teaching and healing go hand in hand, and how life takes up the question of the fullness of life that comes from being grounded in and founded in a divine principle that is demonstrable. And so life will show us all about the healing mission of Jesus and the terrific variety in that, the terrific sense of being able to see differentiation within healings, different types of healing. So Jesus is verse 17 in chapter 4, and it says, "From that time Jesus began to preach and to say, 'Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Thy kingdom come.'" Thy kingdom come. For Jesus, it was the present fact, the present actuality, the fulfilled fact that the kingdom had come for him, for his consciousness. For the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's now. It's right now. Jesus always took the fulfilled sense, and that's the standpoint of now, now, now. And so you see that consciousness of the presence and nowness of the kingdom which he chose. Remember, he chose that over all other kingdoms. Now is causing him to do something. So as life begins, that Jesus began walking by the Sea of Galilee, and he saw two brothers. He saw Simon, which was Peter, and Andrew, his brother. It's interesting, you get really the calling of the first four disciples. They seem to be quite fundamental. Two sets of brothers. Peter and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea. Whenever you hear net, you say, I hear, oh, love, something about love. It says, "For they were fishers, and he saith unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And they straightway," hear life, no hesitation, no fooling around. They straightway left their nets for his, you see. They left their frame of reference for his frame of reference. They identified, they were going to re-identify themselves with Jesus' frame of reference. And going on from thence, he saw other two brethren, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother. These are the Zebedee boys. They're very, very famous. They had a famous mom, too, that comes up later. But they were here. They were with their father, mending their nets, okay? Mending their nets. It's all about the nets, what network, what system are you involved with, do you rely on for your sense of life? And he called them. And they immediately, see, the other one was straightway, now immediately, this is life, left the ship. I love that. I love the symbol of a ship. It's a cybernetic symbol because it's all concerned with navigation and how you navigate, where you're going, and how you get there. And these are cybernetic symbols. What do you have? The navigator and the pilot and so forth. Actually, in those days, they didn't have the equipment within the ship to navigate. They navigated by the stars, which is another story. It's a beautiful story. But they left their ship and they left their father and followed him. Yeah, you see, the father was always the one, even if he wasn't really your father, they would call the father the one that taught them what they knew. And so that's in the Jewish tradition and culture, the one who taught you was then called your father. You know that Jesus said, I must be about my Father's business. So here you see that they left the one who had taught them and chose someone else as their father, their teacher. So that is the closing out, really, of the tone of soul, as though soul as life under the attraction and impulsion of love would say, come and leave everything else behind. Come and follow me. Follow that which you have seen about mind and spirit and soul. Let that show you the way of life, the method of life. Let that identify you with a new principle. It's love's goal then really to have a new net, to have new nets. And that net is going to be shown to be the science of the Christ. Accept the new net, the science which I represent and which I'm going to teach you, and reject the old nets, the old system, the old way of working. And this is what we have to do every day, don't we? As there is such a tendency within the human condition, the mortal aspect of the human condition, to stay back, to go back, to hold back, to return to that which is the old, because it seems to be comfortable. It's not really the comforter. It only seems to the mortal sense to be comfortable. And we have to examine our attitude and ask, am I willing to do that? Do I really accept this idea as a progressive idea? You see, this is such a big question for our time. Do I accept that it's an idea that is going on and on and on, ever new, and constantly going forward? Or do I believe that it's all fixed, it's all finished, it's done? It is fixed, but only in the statement of setting forth the principle, but not in the expression of that principle, which is infinite, you see? So when we come into the fourth period, the fourth tone, you'll see that the Pharisees and the Pharisaical thought stood for this very same thing that we deal with all the time, that said it's fixed, this is the way it is, this is the way it has to be, and these things imply so and so much, and woe to you if you try to say that there's any other way, anything else to be seen, anything new. No newness. No more newness. None of that. And so we see that Jesus really brought in the syntropy of life, and the entropy, the entropic factor was going to go out. That entropic thing that says you must stay where you are and do what you've done and do it again and again and again. Repeat it and repeat and repeat until you go backward. You go backward, but it's not retrocausality in the right sense. So we touch always with life the syntropy of being. Syntropy has all to do with there being causes in the future that are drawing forth the newness of life, bringing forth the newness of life. So we are really constantly going forward, and we have to love that fact, to welcome it, really, to accept that there is a new paradigm and not continually try to entrench ourselves in the old paradigm and go back. Sometimes we even go back to a paradigm before the last paradigm. Ones before and before. And we want to hang back to those old nets and to tie them, retie them, mend them and clean them, and the old network, the old way of working. It's an old form, an old structure of consciousness, and Jesus said, leave the old way. Your own mission, your mission, and each one of us has a mission. Each one of us has our mission really determined by our attitude toward this very, very issue. Are we holding back to the old, or are we seizing the opportunity of the new? Your mission is intimately tied to the answer to that question.